And I'm now realizing that was my last seltzer. I've just opened it at 4 p.m. on a weekday, and I guess I'm gonna have to drink it. Hey neighbor, welcome back to ARTV. My name is John, and it's time for a review of the 8th studio album by the singer-songwriter John Mayer. It's a very shitposty title, but intentionally so, because John Mayer's become quite the troll in the past decade, if you haven't noticed. It's called Sob Rock, and it's a title that from a distance made me lower my metaphorical glasses and go, well, this could go one of two ways, and I guess after sitting with it for a little bit, I'm happy that it went the way that I didn't necessarily expect. John's last proper album was The Search for Everything a handful of years ago, and even that wasn't rolled out in a traditional format. He did multiple EPs before piecing it all together in the Search for Everything album collection. It was not exactly his most memorable work, but still, it wasn't awful. I don't think that John dropped off anything during the 2010s that was just unbearable. It was just more so often on the very forgettable side of the fence, and I found myself kind of clamoring for some of his older works like Battle Studies and Continuum. John went into promoting this record saying, "Don't expect the same thing from me again. I want to shake it up as I try to do from album to album." And while no one's gonna mistake this as Rooms for Squares Part 2, it's also not a totally new leaf. I mean, it's John Mayer doing the 80s, baby! You know who it is, and also he's tackling this 80s inspired sound, but credit where it's due, I'm always preaching about how people like to pretend that there was only one style of 80s music if they take on something that sounds like the 80s. Well, this time machine today is sounding maybe like the soft rock of Toto meets Fleetwood Mac, something like Tango in the Night. That's not really a criticism, for as much as this album does lean into the cheesiness of something like Last Train Home sounding a lot like Toto's Africa, it's still a good time. The synths that kind of vibrantly space out in the background, adding this kind of distant tropical flavor occasionally, but also shying away from some of the things that made him a bit poppier on a few of the recent projects. I embrace this sound a bit more because it just feels authentic to where he's at right now, just kind of being a lot more carefree. I went into Sob Rock saying, seriously, you've got 3 songs on here that came out years ago. New Light is now 3+ years old before Sob Rock hit shelves. But now listening to them in the context of the album with I Guess I Just Feel Like and Carry Me Away, these songs all fit the mood quite well. And I think that John Mayer's approach here was, instead of just littering singles forever, his goal was to make us forget that he had put out those songs so that by the time we get to the album, they sound new. I don't know if that was actually the game plan or not, but it kind of worked for me. Before I get too far ahead of myself sounding like it's just nothing but praise as far as the eye can see, this is definitely a flawed album. There's a lot of generic tendencies, and John taps into that 80s songwriter type of state, so a lot of the songs revolve around broken relationships, or maybe missing or yearning for someone, or maybe some occasional introspection, so it never exactly wades into the deep end, but the moments that do pop out are the ones with stellar guitar work, which, as I hope we all recognize at this point, John Mayer's an incredible guitarist regardless of what you think of his music. Listening to some of these cuts like Till the Right One Comes and All I Want Is to Be With You, I see his Achilles heel, which is playing into this formulaic relationship-styled writing, but I also have to admit that I think that this album flows remarkably well, way better than I thought it would for an album that includes songs that are 3 years old, with one of them being New Light, which was produced by No ID, but somehow that fits crisply right in there at track number 3. The album is in no way a game changer, but it is a nice homage to the years and decades that have gone by, with some John Mayer-isms in there, like the guitar work, and some of the synth work, like I mentioned before. It stands out, it's cohesive, it can get a bit one-noted, but it does do enough to kind of drive itself over that hump. Sob Rock, to me, it's just one of those albums that you can sit down and Crack a truly too, just sit down, sip some seltzer with the other deads, and reflect on the old days. Highlights on this record definitely happen. I think some of the pre-release singles are among those. I Guess I Just Feel Like has a fantastic solo to cap off the song. New Light is really catchy. I like the persona he pushes, but I also like some of the new tracks here, like Shouldn't Matter, but it does. The writing is pretty brutally honest, he carves into it, and then, of course, towards the end of the album, a track that did come out before the record, but I had not heard it at that point, Carry Me Away. I think the bridge on that is fantastic. However, on the polar opposite side, the worst song by a landslide for me was Why You No Love Me. It's so awkward, and I know that it's probably not trying to be super serious, but it's just clumsy. It feels like a teenager singing Why You No Love Me on the hook so earnestly does not do itself any favors with that really bland backing instrumental with the lifeless drums. I guess it all evens out in the end, because you do have those bottom out moments, with that one being the worst, but also the highs of something like Shot in the Dark that are again not reinventing the wheel, but I find myself having a decent time to it, so I'm going to give this new John Mayer record Sob Rock a light 3.5 out of 5. And by 3.5, I mean 3.5 drinks and you're gonna be buzzing and having a fantastic ride. Thank you so much for watching my review of Sob Rock. If you have any thoughts on the record yourself, then let me know in the comments section down below. Don't forget to smash that like button. A like goes a long way. Subscribe if you're new to the channel. And I apologize, I haven't been putting out a ton of content. I injured myself while moving. I might talk more about it soon, but I'm kind of trying to take it slow as I ease back into it. But anyways, a couple of recent videos on screen now, and I'll be back soon with more on ARTV. Sob Rock, to me, it's just one of those albums that you can just sit down.